I am so excited to be leading my second ultimate wine retreat to Walla Walla, Washington this April. And I want you to come with me. It's 3.5 days, over 8 unique wine tasting experiences, 2 extravagant, luxurious dinners, a special welcome bag full of goodies, new friendships, and a whole lot of laughter and fun awaits you on this can't miss retreat. But don't just take it from me. Here's what past guests on this retreat have to say. Take the opportunity. It is spending, but worth it. It would be extremely difficult to arrange this kind of immersive experience on your own. Another said, I was surprised by the beauty and quality of everything we did. I didn't know much about Walla Walla and had no idea how stunning the tasting rooms were. And finally, one said it was so relaxing to just have an expert plan and curate the entire trip. I felt like I was a kid on a trip that my parents planned in the best way possible. Simply put, this is the escape you've been waiting for. Tickets for this retreat are the lowest they'll ever be at just $2,500 for the entire trip. And that includes 4 nights at the Finch Hotel. But there are only 8 spots left, so act fast. If you want to learn more and potentially sign up, head to my website, corkandfizz.com, and find the tab at the top that says Walla Walla Retreat. I will also have the link in the show notes. I am so excited to see your application roll in. Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Today, I have another installment of my Grape Deep Dive mini-series. Today, we're going to talk about Barbera. I first fell in love with this grape at a tasting at my local wine shop. They had one of the Italian producers from Piedmont in town, and we were tasting all of their wines. He had Barolo, Barbaresco, Dolcetto, and Barbera. It was honestly my favorite of the bunch at the time. It's super approachable and very fruity, and what made it even better? It was only $15 a bottle at this nice wine shop. What a deal! It's definitely still one of my favorite Italian wines, so I'm excited to share it with you. I'll be covering the history of the grape, details about the grape and winemaking, and of course, letting you know where you can find this wine. Now, as a reminder, I'm always curious to hear your thoughts on the episode, so be sure to let me know what varietals you'd like for me to cover next. So far, we've learned about Chardonnay, Cabernet Franc, Chenin Blanc, Riesling, and now Barbera. And of course, if you want to learn about those wines, if this is one of your first episodes that you're listening to on the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine, first off, hello, so glad you're here. And secondly, go check them out. I have a lot of really fun episodes and you'll learn about all these wines and then be able to give them a try. If you want to let me know what varietal I should do next, be sure to message me on Instagram at corkandfizz or email me, haley@corkandfizz.com. Now, let's get into Barbera. So we're going to start off with history because you know I love wine history. Now, we're going to start it with a fun fact, actually. Barbera's origins are still unknown. Crazy, right? Mysterious. I feel like I should have the dun-dun-dun kind of music going on after it. Barbera is often synonymous with a region in northern Italy known as Piedmont, so many believe that the grape originated there. And more specifically, they believe it originated in the hills of Monferrato in central Piedmont. Their evidence is a document from the 16th century in the city hall of Nizza Monferrato, which mentions the growing of Vitis vinifera montisferatensis. But this just translates to the grapes growing in the hills surrounding Monferrato. There is no proof that this is the Barbera grape. The first reliable reference that mentioned Barbera being grown near Asti is from 1787. Now, add to this the fact that Barbera wasn't important to Piedmont until after phylloxera hit in the late 1800s. So, this lack of trustworthy records of Barbera in Piedmont before 1787 and relatively recent expansion suggests that the grape originated elsewhere. Plus, recent DNA testing shows that Barbera has little relation to any of the other grapes growing in Piedmont. So, the current theory is that Barbera is a natural cross that happened in the vineyards, but it happened fairly recently, and it didn't happen in Piedmont. Because again, it doesn't have much in common with the other grapes there, so it wouldn't be a natural cross of any of those grapes. So, where then? No one is really sure. But before we get into the wine details, want to hear about a scandal? It's a very fun episode already, isn't it? Now, first, before I share this story, know that nearly all wine these days goes through a vigorous control measures, which means, though I'm going to tell you something very concerning, this is from the past, and there's no need to worry about this ever happening again. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about a time when it was not as strictly controlled. So, back in 1986, a fraudulent winemaker in Italy mixed methanol into his wine with tragic results. The methanol was used to increase the alcohol content of what he considered a rather thin product. So rather than being like another normal winemaker and using a process that we call chaptalization, which is where you add more sugar into the like grape juice before you make the wine, thus there's more sugar for the yeast to eat and more alcohol will be produced. So you get like a more fuller bodied product. He decided, nah, we're going to make the wine first, and then I'm going to add methanol to it. And the wine affected was Oder Barbera, legally permitted at the time for the amount of methanol, which I'm guessing is maybe a byproduct or something. And again, this is at the time. I don't know what it is now. I'm guessing it's lower. I hope it's lower. But the legally permitted amount was 0.3%. His wines had a dose over 5.7%. 8 people died initially from these wines and 30 were hospitalized. The initial culprits, identified by police as distributor Giovanni Cervana and his son Daniele, were soon charged with multiple accounts of manslaughter. But here's the thing, that wasn't all. 300 labels, mostly low grade, were listed as suspect, and 12 growers were arrested on charges of manslaughter, grievous bodily harm, or illegal adulteration of food. Quite a lot of Italian wine was seized in France and West Germany and destroyed. After this, Denmark even enforced a ban on all Italian-made drinks after discovering that a large consignment of vermouth was similarly tainted. So this was not good for Italy, if you can imagine. The Italian industry used this to tighten up its act and enforce much stricter control measures. So again, while this is highly concerning for it happening, it is very, very, very unlikely for it to happen again because they've been so strict as response to this. So there's your fun fact for the day. Okay, let's dig into this grape and some more details about the wine that it makes. So in the vineyard, the grape Barbera is very productive. It ripens relatively late, so it ripens after Dolcetto, which is another grape in Piedmont, but actually before Nebbiolo, which needs even more time to ripen. And it retains this really high level of acidity even when it's fully ripe. So a lot of times when grapes are growing, winemakers have to choose when they're going to harvest, and they kind of try to balance out having it ripen enough so there's enough sugar to produce, the right body and alcohol level in their wine. But the more that it ripens, typically the lower the acidity level goes. So you don't want to leave it too long because then you end up with flabby wine. Barbera retains high levels of acidity with it being fully ripe, so you don't have to worry about that. Barbera typically produces a very approachable style of red wine. It is often considered the wine of the people. It's juicy, straightforward, and delicious. It's a favorite local dinner wine. So when the people in Piedmont go out and buy wine, they typically buy one for their cellar, so that's the Nebbiolo, and one to drink now, which is the Barbera. And Barbera is also my go-to pizza wine. It is just perfect. The best Barberas are deeply colored, fresh, and relatively soft, aka there's not like those harsh tannins, those things that make your mouth feel really dry, like you have cotton balls. And it has this kind of like round feeling. I know that sounds weird, but just like picture a wine with a round feeling. It's really lovely sounding to me. And it also has this bright cherry fruit flavor. They're medium to full bodied with high acidity and low tannins. They can get to be fairly high alcohol, especially when grown in warmer climates. So my favorite Barberas are those that are a little lower in alcohol. So rather than like the 14.5% or higher, I aim to find a Barbera around 13% alcohol. Other flavors and aromas that you might notice include cranberry, strawberry, licorice, blackberry, dried herbs, and black pepper. Again, when you are shopping for these wines, feel free to tell the wine shop owner or whoever you're talking to which flavors you would most like. There are some Barberas that are more herby, or not herby, herbaceous. That's the word that I want. More herbaceous with black pepper and licorice, and there are some that are more fruit forward with that cranberry, strawberry, and blackberry. So be sure to note what you're looking for. This podcast is sponsored by VoChill. When you're enjoying a glass of wine, temperature matters, and you don't need to be a wine expert to know this. You know this the minute you realize you forgot to put the bottle of wine in the fridge, and now you're stuck with lukewarm Sauvignon Blanc that is the opposite of refreshing. You know adding ice cubes will just water the wine down, but it seems like it's your only option. Not anymore. I want to introduce you to one of my favorite wine gadgets, VoChill. This gadget is as simple as it is elegant. It will keep wine perfectly chilled in your own wine glass. No more clunky metal or plastic tumblers or ice in your wine. While this gadget is an absolute must during the summer months, I don't enjoy wine without it from June to September. It's also incredibly useful for those days when you're craving a glass of white or rosé, but you don't want to wait for the bottle to chill in the fridge. VoChill offers a stemmed and stemless chiller in multiple colors, so you're bound to find one that's perfect for you. They also make the perfect gift. I should know, I got one for my mom at Christmas a couple years ago, and she loves it. Head to vochill.com, that's VOCHILL.com, to get your perfect wine chiller, and don't forget to use code CORKANDFIZZ for 15% off your order. This podcast is sponsored by the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club. Interested in trying new wines, but not sure where to start? Or maybe you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you love the idea of tasting wine live with me. If that's you, come join my Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club, and you'll get to sip wine with me twice a month while I help you find new favorite wines. The Cork Crew is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. And the best part about this club, purchasing the wine is completely optional. Plus, all events are recorded, and you have access to the full library of recordings as a Cork Crew member, so you can always catch up if you can't make it live. Oh, and did I mention it's virtual, which means you get to do all of this from the comfort of your sofa in your PJs. No need to worry about driving in crappy traffic, finding a designated driver, or spending an arm and a leg on a taxi. Want to give it a try without the commitment? You're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Tasting Club. With this pass, you'll be able to join a Cork Crew event of your choosing. No strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for anything. You'll be my guest. Simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get your class pass and be one step closer to becoming a member of the best wine tasting club around, the Cork Crew. I can't wait to see you there. Now let's get back to the show. Now, in terms of popular regions where you will find Barbera, of course, we got to start with the mother of all places would be Piedmont, Italy. So remember, Barbera is pretty much synonymous with Piedmont. It is the most planted grape in the region and the third most planted red grape in all of Italy. However, all that said, Barbera has always been placed in the stepsister role to Nebbiolo, the more famous grape of Piedmont. Though it is the most planted grape in Piedmont, it has often been treated like a second-class citizen. It's always produced in high yields. Well, not always. It is often produced in high yields. So sometimes that means that's not always a good thing because if it's produced in high yields, you're not getting as much concentrated flavor. It's also sometimes produced in lesser vineyards, and it gets the leftover oak that Nebbiolo doesn't need. So again, it's kind of got that stepsister role. Luckily, that is changing, and this is thanks to a man named Giacomo Bologna. Giacomo took over his grandfather's vineyards in 1962. He traveled abroad and learned about winemaking in Burgundy and California. He saw the benefit of using new French oak barrels and also the benefit of waiting until the grape was super ripe. So he came back to Piedmont, started reducing yields in the vineyard, buying barrels. He picked his grapes later than anyone else, and he put the wine in oak barrels for aging, 50% new and 50% old. Then he produced an amazing wine. So Barbera's transformation was fully realized when Bologna introduced Barbera de Asti Brico del Ucellone in 1982. It was received by many as an amazing Barbera and recognized that this grape could produce really incredible wine if you treat it right. You will find 3 subregions within Piedmont making Barbera. First, there is Barbera de Asti, DOCG. This region is a minimum of 90% Barbera grapes that must be used. The remaining can be a blend of Fresa, Grignolino, or Dolcetto grapes. The wine must be made before the date of March 1st, immediately following the harvest, and must reach an alcohol content of at least 11.5%. Since 2000, it has been possible to produce Barbera de Asti Superiore, for which the wine must have an alcoholic strength of at least 12.5% by volume and be aged for at least 14 months. That higher alcohol level, and again, why they have a minimum alcohol level and not a max, is they're making sure that the grapes are ripe enough. The more ripe they are, the more sugar they produce, the more alcohol will be made in the wine. The Superiore versions must be aged for at least 14 months, and 6 months of which stored in oak or chestnut barrels. You'll know if a wine is Superiore if it lists one of the 3 subregions on the bottle. It also usually says Superiore on it, but just in case it doesn't, you might also find Nizza, Nizza, Tinella, which actually looks like what it sounds like, and Colli Astiani, which is Colli space Astiani. Those in Asti claim their wine is better than the neighboring Alba region, which I'll tell you about in a second, because they give the grapes the best growing regions, whereas Alba tends to give those to Nebbiolo. The general style of wine here in Asti is more rotund, so like plump, mineral taste and complex bouquet. Bouquet is just kind of another word for the aromatics. Bright and elegant and more age-worthy. Though I'll be honest, I have a soft spot for Barbera de Alba. I don't know if it's because it's the first one I loved, but the Astis are also wonderful. Okay, speaking of Alba, that's the other region, one of the other 3 regions we're talking about. So you have a Barbera de Alba DOC. It's 100% Barbera grapes. There is also a Superiore version here. They must be aged at least 12 months in oak barrels. The general style of wine here is going to be a general darker and fruitier, flavors of prune and spices, fuller bodied, flowery, sharp acidity, and a little dense, dry structure flavor. Finally, you have Barbera di Monferrato DOC. And again, these are the 3 regions in Piedmont, Italy. This is also called Vivace, Vivace. Barbera is usually blended with up to 15% Fresa, Grignolio, and Dolcetto, and it can be slightly sparkling. Interesting, right? I've never had one of these. I'm very curious to try it, though. The Superiore needs to be aged in 12 months, 6 months in barrel, and there is a DOCG status, so that's like the next level up from DOC for just the Superiore. Again, general style of wine here. This is actually the most widely consumed. I don't think I've had this, though, which is kind of crazy. Maybe it's the most widely consumed in Italy. I wouldn't be surprised. Way more pronounced acidity and cherry notes, a lot lighter than the others, and again, it can have a little bit of that sparkling. In terms of some producers to be on the lookout for, I would look for Vietti, Vietti, Viberti, Viberti, Franco Serra, Renato Ratti, and Brezza, Brezza. Now, you will find Barbera in other parts of Italy, so you might find it in Lombardia. This is the wine that you'll find is called Barbera del Otrepo Pavese. This can either be something that ranges from slightly spritzy to semi-sparkling. So again, kind of crazy that these Barberas are made into a sparkling wine. Or it is blended with Crotina and is part of a larger blend component in the red wines of Franciacorta. So these, the Barbera del Otrepo Pavese, these can either be the ones that are slightly spritzy and semi-sparkling, or they can be blended with Crotina and is part of a larger blend component in the red wines of Franciacorta. This is going to be more in like a Cabernet Sauvignon style so deeper, darker, more intense. You can also find Barbera in Emilia-Romagna. Easy drinking, fun, playful style of wine. Other regions of the world that you might find Barbera. So the other ones that I've actually tasted, I've had some from California. So there are some older vines of Barbera in the Sierra foothills. I've also had some from producers Final Girl. So they have Barbera from Happy Canyon in Santa Barbara. And I've also had some from Prima Materia. And these come from Lake County on the north coast of California. You will also find Barbera in Washington, Argentina, and Australia. And Australia is actually, honestly, I'm finding a lot of Italian varietals from there. I'm really excited for more Australian wine to make it to the US market so I can try a lot more of these wines. All right, and finally, let's talk some logistics. So let's talk food pairing, costs, aging, and decanting for this wine. So in terms of food, I have in all caps in my notes, pizza. Like, oh, if you're going to look for a wine to pair with your pizza, have it be a Barbera. It also pairs well with pasta, roasted and spiced meats, and honestly, it's quite fruit friendly. Again, it has that high acidity. A lot of red wines with high acidity, think like Pinot Noir, Gamay. I'm trying to think of some other ones, but those, like any red wine that has high acidity, it does really well with food. So feel free to kind of play around and see what you like with it. In terms of serving temperature, I'd say room temp-ish, so around 60 degrees. Kind of depends on what your room is like. I always recommend throwing it in the fridge for like 20 minutes or so before you drink it. I think it'll give it like that perfect little amount of chill so the alcohol isn't too strong. And honestly, the more alcohol that's in it, the more likely I would do that 20 minutes just to kind of chill it a little bit. You could decant for a short 30 minutes or so, but it's not really one of those wines that it's necessary for. I think you only need to spend about $15 to $20, but then if you spend $30, you can be amazed in the quality of wine that you're getting. And these are meant to be drank now, unless you're told otherwise. So just drink it now. All right, have I convinced you to grab a Barbera the next time you're out shopping for wine? I really hope so. If you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast, please tell me. I like to hear it. You know, we all feel good if we're told that you like something that I make. So please reach out, find me on Instagram, email me, haley@corkandfizz.com. I would love to know. And also tell me what grape variety would you like me to talk about next. You can always leave a review or do a quick rating, though if you've done this once, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The biggest thing you can do to help me is to share this podcast with more wine lovers in your life. Simply click the little share button. I think it looks like a square with like an arrow coming out of it. That is the share button. Click it, copy the link, post this on Facebook, post this on Instagram. Encourage all the wine lovers in your life to learn about Barbera. And be sure that you subscribe so you never miss an episode. I release new episodes every Wednesday. In next week's episode, you'll be getting a crash course on Burgundy, France. So remember I did French Wine 101 a while ago. We learned the basics of Burgundy, but you're going to get a little more of a crash course from my friend Alex Lopez. Alex is a wildly talented wine educator, and he just recently got his MBA from Burgundy's School of Wine and Spirits Business. Like, how cool is that? And you can be guaranteed he knows what the heck he's talking about. He spent some time in Burgundy, and I'm so jealous. Thank you again for listening, and as a thank you, I'd love to share my free shopping guide, 15 wines under $15. Simply head to my website, corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and join my mailing list. And don't forget to grab your free class pass and join my virtual wine tasting club, the Cork Crew. We dive deep into grape varieties just like I did in this episode, but we get 2 new wines every single month. It's so much fun. Hope you can join. Cheers!